Well, hey everybody, welcome to the latest of the Innovators Series interviews. And today we're extremely lucky to have with us none other than Darius Dunn, who is the Assistant General Manager of Arena Operations at the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C., which is the home of the NBA's Wizards and the NHL's Washington Capitals. So great to have you here, Darius. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve, and happy to be a part of this and appreciate the invite. Um, I've been probably started in the industry in '89 while still in college, and being born and raised in Philly, had an opportunity to work at the at our stadium there, which was fortunate for me because I've got an early peek behind the curtain, if you will, to both NFL and Major League Baseball. So while working in school for those really 3.5 years or so, came away after graduation with some pretty significant experience on both those leagues and some major stadium concerts at the time. Um, so very fortunate there, and I have been fortunate throughout my career in terms of the mix. I have worked in three of the four kind of primary sectors in our industry. So throughout my career, arenas, stadiums, and theaters. And while most of my venues have been on the university campus, so I've been fortunate to kind of get some experience on the university side. But I count myself lucky to have, really, not discounting Major League Soccer, but really what they call the Big Four leagues, which is NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, and NHL now with my current position. So, and then my mixed, excuse me, from a primary market, secondary market, and tertiary market have had kind of that cross section. Some of those lessons that can only be learned working in a small building, right? Having to wear
Right.
multiple hats.
Yeah.
Whenever I talk
Yeah.
to class, I would always tell folks, don't, while the NFL and the NBA buildings, they kind of get all the shine. Don't shy away from, the small buildings, particularly if you have an opportunity early in your career, because you get a lot of times in the bigger organizations, you get put in a department doing a thing where if you're, kind of in a smaller venue, you have to wear a lot of hats and get a good cross section of getting a good opportunity to cut your teeth and learn a lot of aspects about the business, which is what I found myself in very early on. So I count that as a benefit. So I've been fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly, I've known you for a long time, and always, been amazed at, the breadth of skill set that you have with all those different things you just mentioned, and I can't believe you started in 1989 though. You must have been five. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but
People tend to be a little surprised. I got started a little early, and the other thing that as well, that I share, and I count myself again fortunate relative to opening up, you know, um, some new arenas and new construction, and that's a whole nother aspect that certain
right.
folks, a lot of people don't get an opportunity to do. So I've had a chance to open up two new arenas, and so it's allowed me to see and witness and be a part of planning, strategizing, grand openings, and things of that nature, from both new buildings and old buildings. New jobs that I got. I came at two of the buildings when they were 20 years old, and so that
Wow.
brings with it, older
Yeah.
buildings and having to renovate and things of that nature. So it's been a fun ride for sure.
No, absolutely. And during that time, Darius, what say over the past decade or so at least, what would you say from a technology perspective has had the most impact on the way arenas do business now? What have you seen come in that's been like really changed things from a technology viewpoint?
And I think even in our personal lives, the smartphone has just been
Right.
opened up a whole nother world, right, for us. And I think that in and of itself, and remains to this day, the the possibilities for service delivery, that has been a sea change on a number of things. So, from buying our tickets, from the ticket buying process to the venue entry process. So now it's, not necessarily hard tickets. You can scan yourself into on the buildings upon entry. It has, even from the F&B ordering and purchase process from your seat, with the mobile phone, and even some of the things from these, and as of late, mobile event apps,
Mm.
from an accessibility standpoint, from, closed captioning and captioning from event related to even kind of multilingual streaming in some respects, and language translation, particularly in a market like DC, where you go in and sometimes you have multiple languages. And as our show mix kind of expands, those certainly are things that you can add to the toolbox from a guest relations standpoint to kind of help in that service delivery. So the smartphone for me has been kind of numero uno in terms of, once it kind of hit the scene, if you will, the impact it has had to be able to enhance kind of what we do from a patron and client perspective.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's been the game changer for all aspects of our industry, and continues to be. As you say, I think people are used to whatever they can do with their apps and their smartphones in their day-to-day lives. They want to bring that now to their entertainment and be able to have those same sort of interactions. It's pretty amazing. Um,
Exactly. And even for us, now, because of the security related measures
yeah,
that we
yeah,
take, not being
yeah.
able to bring in bags, we have a bag check locker system. You can just kind of an app for that, and purchase process, and get your, so we've pushed a lot of things to the smartphone, and across all of our industries that have served us well in a number of perspectives.
Yeah, that's a great point with the security aspect in that too. What do you think are the greatest challenges that the venue teams at arenas face with technology? Is it do you find that the teams embrace it, or where do you think you see where it's a bit of a challenge for them?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. One, as we look to incorporate technology into our processes, and it kind of stretches us a little bit, not to lose what I'm going to call the human element of the guest
Right.
relation and experience aspect of our business, because really we're still in the people business, and that
Yep.
face to face. And then the more we, when you talk about touchless and all of those kinds of things, some folks see it as, well, an exchange of technology for staff and personnel. So how do we keep that human connection, and as part of what we do? So
Mm,
integrating all of those technologies, as we try to all start to create an immersive experience from the seat, and increasing the engagement, not to lose that human element of really what um, the live event and in-person business that we're doing, particularly on the arena side. It harkens back when MTV and the music videos first
right.
came out. They were like, oh my goodness, what is this going to do? Nobody's going to want to
Yeah.
go to a show anymore, because they could just
Yep.
sit at home and watch the videos. But
Yep.
as we learned, and was amplified by COVID, you know, we as humans love the interpersonal connection and
Hmm.
gathering. It is no coincidence that IAVM, in its original iteration of its branding, assembly was in the, it was the International
Yeah.
Association of Assembly Managers, where people come together and where they come to assemble. And despite technology, and despite we still have that, and that's a core group. It's the one thing that COVID kind of reiterated to us, is wanting to kind of get together. So, but the other challenge is going to be, as one might think, the investments that the venues make tend to be, or thought of to be, on the high dollar seats and areas. And so for us, in the arena setting, how can we spread the technology and those enhancements to all the price points, even in the quote unquote cheap seats at the top, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
as we start to invest in those things, that kind of all of this digital fan engagement kind of thing. Make sure that it's throughout the venue and not just in the high dollar seats.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and sort of leads into our next question, which is, what do you see from again, we'll stay on the technology topic for a minute, but what do you see in the technology side having the a bigger impact on arena operations
Yes.
as we go forward?
Um, in the other part of that is going to be, we still have a lot of venues that have, that there's still a generation here that's working and dealing with this that's not growing up, with the technology. So the training piece and being able to
Hmm.
use all of that and being able to adapt not only the staff, but the certain level of clientele that we
Sure.
have
Yeah.
for certain events. And so bringing those folks around, that is also going to be a challenge for us as well from a training standpoint and staying up. And then it also becomes down what becomes a, as I mentioned before, being in a primary, secondary, tertiary market, it becomes a little easier, or is thought of as being a little easier in the bigger buildings because we may have larger budgets. But how can the smaller building, tertiary market, small building adapt from a capital expenditure and budget standpoint to kind of keep up and incorporate some of these things that they can do, so they too can kind of enhance what they're doing for the patrons in their various communities is going to be a challenge for us as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we all get a bit carried away with all the shiny new toys with technology and the latest and greatest and AI and everything else. But
Yes.
yeah, there's got to be a lot of thought put into the budgeting for that, and most importantly, like you said, the training and the changing of the guard, so to speak.
Yes.
So yeah, I totally get what you're saying there, and maybe just to finish up. What words of advice would you have for someone that's starting out their career? I know you touched on some of this earlier on, but for someone starting their career and working in arenas, what's the golden nuggets that you could take from your career and provide to them?
Uh, a few, and I'll share, but I just want to back up one because I had a thought as you were talking. I mean,
Sure.
the other thing that the NBA All Star this season unveiled a glass um, basketball court at the NBA this year. And so it really is essentially what we play on now is a wood floor that's been the wood
Right.
floor for 100 years. So now these new ideas and bright ideas were really essentially they have test piloted it and use it overseas. A German company, I think, if I have that right. Um, but it's really essentially playing on top of an LED. You're playing on top of a TV, a big LED
Wow.
screen, and it's
Wow.
glass on top. And you would think glass, oh my goodness, if the players
Yeah.
fall and cut themselves,
Yeah.
but they refined it and made it feel just like a wood floor, even to the point where the sneakers sliding on the floor that
Squeaky.
makes the squeaky sound. Yeah, so
Yeah.
they perfected
Wow.
that. But essentially, what that can do is at a flip of a switch, kind of the graphics and the stats, and incorporate that because the players. In one of the questions that kind of came out really early on is how distracting this would be for the players
Yeah.
playing on it. So as anything, when it kind of first gets introduced, there'll be a development process. But for our arenas that are on college campuses, in particularly for being on college campuses, I'm sensitive to this, where you've got volleyball practice for 1 hour, basketball practice for another. So can you imagine the tech person just goes in and says, punch up a couple of buttons and all the lines are volleyball, and then as soon as
Oh,
volleyball's over,
cool.
punches up the bill and it
Yeah.
changes all the lines to basketball or whatever the
How
case may
cool.
be. So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to how that's going to kind of be introduced. It's a high dollar amount now, but I think for what the possibilities are, it was really eye-opening to see. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, back to your question in terms of career advice. For me, as I mentioned, I come from a small building, and so that whole diversifying your skill set is always a big thing for me. I think, and not only sometimes we get kind of pigeonholed relative to getting in the industry, in the sports industry or the music industry. That's what we in, and that's the only thing that we see. I would encourage any young managers to look outside the industry for any lessons learned that have some similarities. Hotel industries, they're also in the business of client satisfaction and client service delivery, and the restaurant industry. So are there any nuggets that we can glean from some of these dotted line industries that service clients that we can kind of pull and incorporate into our day to day is one of those things, and very early on, and I think it still holds true, particularly for those that are just kind of coming up. Whatever needs to be done, raise your hand and get in, and don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves. And also some some folks, as me, Stephen, and you know this personally, I have moved around a little bit, right? And so that comes with its own pain points, particularly when you get up to a point where you have family in tow and things of that nature. So I encourage folks when they're young and able and still kind of single and have not much luggage. If there's a call or opportunity somewhere else around, don't be afraid to move around and expand that experiences, not only in the sector that you may want to be in the various sectors, so you can kind of add the various tools to the toolbox, and then I think that pays dividends in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And that's great advice. All of those little nuggets you just shared with us. So, look, Darius, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And I hope everybody gets as much out of this as I did. And again, thank you, and look forward to seeing you again soon at an event.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.